Hi, it's John Vu, and today's lesson is on The Weight by the band from the Trinity College London Grade 1 Drums Rock and Pop syllabus. The Weight was released as a single in 1968 by the American-Canadian band The Band, and this was also performed at the Woodstock Festival, and in 2011 in the Rolling Stone it made the top 50 greatest songs of all time. So if we look at the sheet music, you can see in the top left of the page it says technical focus, because this piece is one of the technical focus pieces in the exam. So if you choose to sit the exam, there's a couple of elements you need to make sure you work on and include when you play this piece. And we'll go through those elements as we learn the song. And beneath technical focus, you've got the song title written there, which is The Weight. And then lower down, we've got the style of the song, which is folk rock. And then next to that, we've got a crotchet or a quarter note equals 74, and that is the tempo of the piece. So the tempo is 74 beats per minute, and those beats that we feel, which are 74 per minute, they are crotchets or quarter notes, which are the same thing, okay? And then next to that, in brackets, it says 2 bars counting. So that's just letting you know that when you play this song with a backing track, there's going to be 2 bars of counting before you start playing. So remember, a counting not only counts you down into the start of the piece, but it also lets you feel the tempo. So you're going to hear 2 bars of the tempo of the piece to make sure when you come in on the 1, you come in at the right tempo, okay? So those 2 bars of counting are going to sound 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically there's going to be a bar of minims or half notes, and then a bar of crotchets or quarter notes, okay? So you've got 2 bars there to feel the tempo, and obviously it also counts you into the start of the piece. So that brings us into the start of the piece. So looking beneath that bit of information there, you've got the first bar of music, and at the start of the bar we've got our clef, so our percussion clef or our neutral clef, just letting us know that on this stave it's drum notation or percussion notation, but in this case obviously it's drum notation. And then next to the clef you've got your time signature, which is 4/4. So we've got a 4 at the top, which tells you there's 4 beats in the bar, so you just count up to 4 for each bar. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, back to 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the bottom number being 4 tells you each of those beats that we're counting is a quarter note or a crotchet. Okay, so that's the time signature, and then in the first bar there you've got a whole note rest or a semi-breathe rest. So that lasts for 4 beats, which is obviously all 4 beats of the bar. So the first bar of music, the drummer, which is us, we just rest for all 4 beats of that first bar. So then if we go into the next bar, we've got another rest there, and that one is a minim rest or a half note rest. So we rest for 2 beats, so the first 2 beats of that bar, and then we've got a crotchet or a quarter note on the small tom, and then 2 quavers or 2 eighth notes on the floor tom. So we rest for a whole bar, and then the second bar we rest for the first 2 beats, and then on the 3 we're going to play a small tom with a right hand, and then on the 4 and we're going to play right left on the floor tom. Okay, so what we'll try first of all, in time with a metronome at the song tempo of 74 beats per minute, we're just going to rest for 2 beats and then play the 3 and the 4 and on the small tom on the floor tom. Just getting used to the timing of that feel, okay? So we're not going to include the first bar where we rest for the whole bar, we're just going to rest for half a bar, so we're playing bar 2. Rest for half a bar and then play the fill for the other half of the bar on the 3, 4 and we'll loop that bar through 4 times. So let's try bar 2 now in time with the metronome. And then after that bar, you've got a groove. So the top rhythm is all quavers or eighth notes. So we just count that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that rhythm is played first note, first quaver or first eighth notes on the crash cymbal. So you can see the ledger line through that X to let you know it's the crash. And then the other eighth notes or quavers are on the hi-hat. So we've got a closed hi-hat. So you've got the 1 here on the crash, then we come down for the other notes on the hi-hat. So you've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the bottom rhythm beneath that, we've got a crotchet or a quarter note on the bass drum, a crotchet or a quarter note on the snare drum, crotchet or quarter note on the bass drum, crotchet or quarter note on the snare drum. Alright, so they're just alternating there, just playing 1, 2, 3, 4. So bass, snare, all as crotchets or quarter notes. Okay, I'm playing that snare with the left hand, obviously, because the right hand's going to be playing the cymbals. Right, so we'll put those two rhythms together. Obviously, it's a groove we've played a lot before, so we'll try those 2 bars. So we've got our intro fill, 3, 4, and then we just crash in to play that groove for 1 bar. So we'll try that now with the metronome, just that top line, and we'll also include the dynamic. So we've got the dynamic written beneath the fill, and we've got MF there, which is short for mezzo forte, which means medium loud or moderately loud or half loud. Okay, so that's about our normal sort of playing level. So not too quiet, not too loud, just right in the middle there. So let's try include that dynamic as we play this top line. So at the end of that line, after that bar of groove, you can see we've got a double bar line there. So that tells you there's going to be a musical change. So it just kind of sets you up to make sure you're not caught off by the music changing. So if we look to line 2 now, we've got verse written above the line. So that tells you we've moved into the verse, okay, which is why we've got that musical change there, that double bar line. So bar 4, at the start of line 2, we've got our groove. So we've got a verse groove there, and the groove is 2 bars long. So bars 4 and 5. So both of those bars there, we got that 2-bar groove. So the first bar is the same bar we played in the previous line, just without the crash. So we're going to play all of those quavers or eighth notes on the hi-hat. And then in the second bar, we've got a different bass drum rhythm. So you've still got the 1, obviously the 2 and 4 stay on the snare, but you've got the 1 on the bass drum, and then instead of just the 3, we've got quavers or eighth notes on the 3 and we've also got another quaver on the and of 4. So our bass and snare rhythm together for that second bar on line 2 is 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. So remember that 2 and 4 on the snare. So you've got bass, snare, bass, bass, snare, bass. Okay, so there's more bass in that bar. So let's just try that 2-bar groove 4 times through in time the metronome just to get a hold of that bass drum rhythm, okay? Let's give that a go now. So after that 2-bar groove, we can see we've got slash notation in the other 2 bars of line 2, and each of those slashes represents a beat in the bar. So we've got 4 beats in our bar, and we also have 4 slashes in our bar. So slash notation tells us we can improvise, but above the first bar of slash notation, it says cont sim, which is short for continua simile, which means continue in a similar way. So we've played a 2-bar groove there that's written out, and then what it wants us to do is continue playing in a similar way. So it's giving us a bit of freedom to improvise, but it's also telling us to play something similar to what we've just played. So what we've just played is a kind of basic first bar of groove, and then in the second bar of groove, we're kind of adding more bass drum. So we're playing some more quavers or eighth notes on the bass drum there. So that's what it wants us to continue, that kind of thing. Okay, so you want to improvise, but you want to stick to something similar. Okay, so you don't want to kind of drastically change and start improvising by playing like a big solo. We want to stick to that 2-bar groove, which is written out for you in the first 2 bars of line 2. Then when we come into line 3, we've got more slash notation. So we've got all 4 bars in that line in slash notation. So again, we want to continue playing in a similar way, which is playing that 2-bar groove. And then in the 4th bar of line 3, you can see it says fill above the 3rd slash. So remember, those slashes represent the beats in the bar. So in bar 4, we need to play a fill for beats 3 and 4. Okay, so bar 4, above the third beat it says fill, so we play a fill for beats 3 and 4 of that bar. Okay, so again we can improvise the fill as long as it comes in on that third beat. So for lines 2 and 3, which are the verse, we've got that 2-bar groove written out that we play, and then for the next 2 bars of that line we improvise but play in a similar way to those 2 bars. And then in line 3, for the first 2 bars of line 3, again we play a 2-bar groove that we're improvising but playing in a similar way to the one that's written out in line 2. And in the final 2 bars of line 3 we play something similar for the first bar, something similar for the half a bar of the last bar, and then we play a fill for beats 3 and 4. Okay, so what we're going to try first of all is just playing bars 3 and 4 of line 3, just to get used to that. So we're going to play something similar to what we were playing in the groove that's written out for the start of the verse for that first bar, which is bar 3 of the line, and then we're playing half a bar of groove for bar 4 and then half a bar of fill. So the fill comes in on the 3. Okay, so we've got a whole bar of groove, half a bar of groove and half a bar of fill. And again, we've got a bit of license to improvise as long as we're playing in a similar way to that 2-bar groove that's written out. So let's try those 2 bars. So bar and a half of groove and half a bar of fill. So the fill comes in on the third beat. And let's try that through 4 times with the metronome. So now we can see there's a double bar line at the end of that line, and that means we've come to the end of the musical sections. The music's going to change as we go on. So we've played through the verse, and obviously there's like a 3-bar intro at the top there. So we've got 3 lines. So we're going to play through all 3 lines in time with the metronome. So we come in with a fill, we crash in with a groove, and then in line 2 we come in with a verse. So think of the verse as 4 lots of 2 bars. So we've got our 2-bar groove written out, and then we've got an improvised 2-bar groove, and then we move into line 3 where we've got another improvised 2-bar groove, and then we've got an improvised groove for a bar and a half, and then we've got half a bar fill. Okay, so let's try all 3 lines in time with the metronome. And now we'll try the top 3 lines in time with the backing track. So remember, you've got that 2-bar counting that's going to count you into the piece. So really kind of listen to that and feel the tempo. And remember, when we come in at the start of the piece, we've got a whole bar rest. So we rest for the first 4 beats, and then we've got another half bar rest there. So we rest for 2 beats. So you've got a semi-brief rest and then a minim rest. So we rest for the whole of bar 1 and then half of bar 2, and we're coming in on the 3 of bar 2 with the fill, crash into the groove, and then the lyrics will kick in for the verse. So when we start the verse, we've got our 2-bar groove. So remember, play what's written for the first 2 bars, improvise a 2-bar groove, improvise another 2-bar groove, improvise for a bar and a half, and then you've got that half bar fill for 3 and 4. Okay, so let's try that in time with the backing track.
Some place where I can lay my head. down and shook my head. Knows all he said. Take a load off Annie.
So now we come into line 4, which is the chorus. You can see chorus written above the first bar there of the chorus, which is bar 12. And we've got a 2-bar groove there written out. So again, on the symbol of that 2-bar groove, which is the first 2 bars of the chorus, we've got quavers or 8th notes on the cymbal. So we crash in on the 1 and we play the other 8th notes or quavers on the hi-hat. And then beneath that, we've got a bass drum on the 1, and then the snare drum's playing a 2, 3, 4, and then all 4 beats of the second bar. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so quavers or 8th notes with the right hand, and then quarter notes from the 2 or crotchets from the 2 with the left hand on the snare drum. And obviously that bass drum is playing the 1 of the first bar. Okay, so let's just try and get used to that first of all. So we're going to leave out the bass drum on the end of 3. Okay, first of all. So we're just going to hit all those downbeats with the bottom rhythm, the bass and snare first of all, and keeping those quavers or 8th notes with the right hand. So let's try that first of all 4 times through. And now we're going to add in that other bass drum in the groove, which is on the end of 3. Okay, so you're going to crash in with the bass drum, and then you hit the snare on 2, the snare on 3, and then you got that bass drum on the end of 3, just before that final snare on the 4. Okay, so let's include that now in with the groove, and we'll try it 4 times through again. So after that 2-bar groove, you can see in the 3rd bar of line 4, you've got a 1-bar repeat symbol. So that means repeat the previous bar. So just that 2nd bar of that 2-bar groove, you're going to repeat that. And then coming into bar 4 of that line, you've got 2 notes written out there. So we've got a snare drum on the 1, and then we've got a crash and bass drum on the and of 1. So they're 2 quavers or 2 8th notes. So the rhythm is 1 and. So we've got that snare on its own on the 1, and then we've got a crash and bass drum on the and. Okay, so we're going to make sure we hit that in time. So obviously we've got this on a downbeat of 1, so the snare lands right on the 1, and the crash and bass needs to be played right on the upbeat, so on the and in the middle of the 1 and the 2. Okay, so we really need to hit that point right in the middle. We don't want to come in too early with that crash and be too close to the snare note, and obviously we don't want to hit it too late, so we're too close to the second beat, which is the rest. We really want to feel that on the upbeat, on the and of 1, that crash symbol, okay, and we call that a push note. So we got a rest, so a quarter note or crotchet note rest on 2 for that bar, and then we got a minim rest or a half note rest for the 3 and 4. So we rest for the rest of that bar, and then in the final bar of that line, you can see the time signature changes to 3, 4. So we got a 3 at the top, which tells you there's 3 beats in that bar, and the 4 at the bottom, which obviously has been 4 at the bottom for the whole of the piece, just means the beats are still quarter notes or crotchets, okay? So the only thing that's changing is the top number, which is the amount of beats in the bar. So for that bar there, we got 3 beats. So we've got our 1 and for the fill, rest for 2, 3, 4, and then you've got a time signature change in 3, 4, and then you've got another semi-brief rest in that bar. Now, a semi-brief rest represents a whole bar, no matter what the time signature is. So that's just saying rest for that whole bar of 3, 4. Okay, so we play the 1 and fill, rest for 2, 3, 4, and then we also rest for 1, 2, 3, which is the whole bar of 3, 4. So let's try those 2 bars now. 1, getting used to hitting that fill, which is the snare right on the downbeat of 1 and the crash right in the middle of 1 and 2, so on the and of 1. Okay, so make sure you're hitting that point. And then also make sure you're counting the rest of the 4/4 bar, so we're resting for 2, 3 and 4, and then we rest for the whole of the 3/4 bar, which is 3 beats, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to loop those 2 bars 4 times. So you've got the feel, 1 and rest, 2, 3, 4, rest, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1 and. Okay, so we're getting used to the we're getting used to playing the fill and also getting used to the time signature. So make sure you count those bars to make sure you're playing the right time signatures. Okay, so let's try those 2 bars 4 times through. And now we'll try the whole of that line. And that brings us into the final line of the piece. So in the first 2 bars of the final line, we've got a 2-bar groove. And it's the same groove we played at the start of the piece in the verse. So we just got those quavers on the hi-hat or 8th notes on the hi-hat, and then we're alternating quarter notes or crotchets on the bass and snare. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So bass, snare, bass, snare. That's for the first bar. Then in the second bar, you've still got your bass and snare, so on the 1, the 2, and then we've got a quaver or an 8th note on the and of 2. So you're going to hit this 1, 2, and. So bass, snare, bass. Okay, and with that bass drum on the and of 2, you're going to hit a crash. So for that first half of the bar in bar 2, you've got 1 and 2 and. Okay, a bass drum on the 1 and also the and of 2 with the crash symbol. Okay, so let's just try those 2 bars 4 times through just to get used to putting the 2 bars together and also hitting that crash again on the upbeat. So it's on the and of 2, right in the middle of the 2 and the 3. Okay, so we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. Okay, so let's try those 2 bars 4 times through. So on that 3 and 4 where we rested in the second bar of that groove, we've got 2 slashes written in the music there, which again means we can improvise. And above the 2 slashes, it says fill. So we just need to improvise a fill there. And remember, each slash represents a beat in the bar. So we've got 2 slashes, which means we improvise a fill for 2 beats. So obviously we played half a bar of groove, which is 2 beats, and then we're going to improvise a fill for the other 2 beats. Okay, so we're going to try those 2 bars again, but instead of resting for those 2 beats now, we're going to play an improvised 2-beat fill. Okay, so let's try getting used to that. We'll play it through with a metronome 4 times. So looking at bars 3 and 4 of the bottom line, you can see they're the same as the 2 bars we just played, but you're going to crash at the start of bar 3. Okay, and then in the final bar of the piece, you can see it's the final bar because we've got that final bar line. We've just got a crash on the 1 and you let it ring, which is why we've got that little loopy line there, that tie line. Okay, so we let the crash ring and we play the bass drum with the crash, okay, for the last bar. So we play through that 2-bar groove twice, and obviously just make sure you crash into the second time you play it. So that's the last line. So let's give the last line a try with a metronome, and you can see the dynamic written there. So we've got MF written above the final line, which is short for mezzo forte, which means moderately loud or half loud, medium loud, okay? So make sure it's not too quiet, not too loud. So let's try the bottom line in time with the metronome. And that's the whole chorus. So the chorus is the bottom 2 lines of the piece, so lines 4 and 5. So we're going to put those 2 lines together now. So we crash in with our 2-bar groove, where we're hitting those downbeats on the snare for 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so remember we don't hit the 1 on the first bar on the snare, but we do play the bass drum. So we've got that 2-bar groove, then you've got a 1-bar repeat, so we only repeat the previous bar, okay, which is the second bar of that two-bar groove. And then we've got our 2/8 notes, so our push note on the crash. Make sure we rest for the rest of that bar, and we rest for the 3/4 bar. So remember to count that to make sure you are resting for the right amount of beats, and then we come into the bottom line. So you can see there's a dynamic difference between the 2 lines. So the first line of the chorus, we've got an F written beneath the first bar. So the dynamic of the first line of the chorus is forte, which means loud. And then when we come into the bottom line, that dynamic changes to MF, which is mezzo forte, which is medium loud or half loud or moderately loud. So we need to drop down a bit, okay? So the first line is loud, second line is half loud, moderately loud. Okay, so we need to drop that down. So let's try the 2 lines now in time with the metronome, and just make sure after that 3/4 bar you come in at the right point on the bottom line. Okay, so remember you rest for that last bar for 3 beats, 1, 2, 3, and then make sure you hit the 1 of the last line. Okay, so you might need a bit of practice on that part as well. So make sure you count that part aloud. Count the last 2 bars of the first line of the chorus out loud initially, so you can feel those beats in the bars. Okay, obviously the second from last bar is 4 beats, and the last bar of that line is 3 beats. So count them out loud initially, like I said, just to help you out. So let's try the whole chorus now in time with a metronome. And now we'll try the whole chorus in time with the backing track. So we're going to put it to the music. So remember the dynamic changes. Make sure you're hitting that push note right in the right place, or on that and of 1. And then obviously make sure you're not forgetting that 3/4 bar. So we're not resting for 4 beats in that last bar of the first line of the chorus. We just got 3 beats. Okay, so you really want to make sure you're coming in at the right point on the 1 of the last bar. So let's try the bottom 2 lines of the piece, which is the chorus, in time with the backing track.
He just grinned and shook my head, knows all he said. Take a load off Fanny, take a load for free. Take a load off Fanny, and you put the load right on me.
And now we're going to try the whole track in time with the backing track. Okay, so from the top of the piece right to the final bar, putting this piece all together. Okay, so we've got quite a few changes. Remember, we come in with a whole bar rest and then another 2 beats of rest before our fill, crashing with our groove, and then we're into our verse in line 2, where we're playing a 2-bar groove there, and then we're improvising for the rest of the verse. Okay, so improvise that 2-bar groove. So remember, we're continuing in a similar way for that improvisation, and then we've got a 2-beat fill at the end of the verse, which again we're improvising, which takes us into our chorus. So remember, the chorus initially goes up to forte, so bring up the energy for the chorus, and then make sure you don't forget that 3/4 bar at the end of the line, and then we come in with our final line, which is played at mezzo forte. And we've got some more improvised 2-beat fills in that line. Now, for the technical focus of this piece, the 2 elements are the push note, which we mentioned, hitting that crash cymbal on the end of 1. So that's at bar 15. Okay, so the end of 1, just make sure you're really hitting that note at the right point. So in the middle of the 1 and the 2, right in the middle. Okay, it's really important. And the other element of the technical focus is the counting. So that's mainly that 3/4 bar. Okay, so just make sure you're really feeling the rests in the rest of that bar where the push note is, and then obviously also resting for the 3 beats of the 3/4 bar. Okay, so like I said before, count that aloud to really feel the bar. And as you get used to the length of the bar, you won't sort of need to count out loud. You can kind of just feel those 3 beats. Right, so there's the 2 elements of a technical focus that you need to include in this piece. So really bring that in as we play the whole track now. And yeah, enjoy it. It's a great track to play. A lot of nice drum parts to perform in this piece. So let's see if we can put it all together.
Someplace where I can lay my head. Hey mister, can you tell me where a man might find a bed? He just grinned and shook my head, knows all he said. Take a load off Annie, take a load for free. Take a load off Annie, right on me.
So that's the whole piece. So again, remember, when you practice, we obviously went through the parts at song tempo, but that's the target tempo, okay? So when you practice the parts in this song, bring the tempo down to a comfortable tempo for you so you feel relaxed when you play it. As you get more comfortable with the parts, you can bump the tempo up till you eventually get to that song tempo. Once you're there and you're playing comfortably, you feel comfortable, it sounds comfortable and it sounds good, that's when you want to start playing it to the music. Okay, so remember that when you practice, don't get frustrated, really spend the time playing it at comfortable tempo for you. And like I said, once you're there, once you're at song tempo, have fun playing it with the music. And we'll see you in the next lesson.